Good afternoon. Thank you all for attending the 2025 Sage 300 CRE Year-end Form webinar. We are so happy that you guys are here. We want to let you know that we have enabled Q&A during this session. So as we go through the session, think of anything that you have questions about. And this presentation, replay video, and PDF will be made available to you. Watch the Community Hub announcement page for when that's available. All righty, so let's get into our lovely Sage 300 CRE Year-end Form webinar. All right. So the contents for this webinar, we're going to go through introductions, we're going to go through the Year-end Center, forms preparation, and perform Atrix Forms review and test. Super important for this time of year. I am Gaylene Willis, and I've been with Sage for over 26 years. Prior to Sage, I was in the banking industry. Our moderator today is Shar Ferguson. Shar has been with Sage for over 25 years. And prior to her life at Sage, Shar was in the legal industry. We want to make sure that you guys bookmark the Sage Year-end Center. It is a great place to get all sorts of information. Not only will you get the FAQs that we have out there for payroll, you'll have access to the learning pages, the year-end training for both Canada and US, Sage University. You also have the opportunity to see the checklist and note those checklists, the timeline, for not only just for payroll, but AP, property management, general ledger, both for Canada and US. You also can see the product announcements, what's new, what's changed, what's coming. Okay, a lot of good information about software updates. You also have great quick links to product resources, Atrix e-file deadlines, when they get updated, you'll know. Also, the Canadian CRA website and US IRS website. Great links. So make sure you bookmark that. Really good resource. Are we ready? Is our version up to date? It might be. It might not be. A good place to tell is to go in and go to the product documents or actually help about, and you'll be able to see what your version is. Now, the recommended year-end version is 25.2. There will be a version update here pretty soon, and that will definitely be another recommended version we want you to get to. You have plenty of time. Now, the notes are available for all your versions under the product documents. So help, product documents, and you'll be able to pull in, see what the most current version is out there, and you'll be able to then double click on it and get to the details. Per application, you'll be able to see what's changed. So you'll go to Help, Product Documents, Sage 300 CRE, or Construction and Real Estate. For right now, you'll see version 25 and Release Notes 25.2. Now, should you need to contact Atrix, they're going to want to know what version you're on and if you're up to date on your Atrix forms. Open an Atrix report, go to Help, About Tax Forms and E-Filing by Atrix. You'll be able to see what your current version is for Atrix. We recommend you test the process. It's so important to test it. It's hard to get used to doing something you only do once a year. So make sure you go through the process, test it. You'll be able to identify changes or things that you might not have remembered you did last year will pop on the screen. It'll bring some familiarity to a task that's really tough to remember on what we did when and why. So make sure you test. Before you go through your test process, print a deposit summary for the 2025 year. Make sure you use the first day of the reporting period to the last day of the reporting period. So you're going to use check dates 1/1/2025 through check dates 12/31/2025. You want to make sure you kind of visually wrap your arms around those transactions so your totals are going to be accurate. Remember that your tax reports are using check dates. They don't use period end dates. So we want to make sure that we're starting that process off with good details and good data. Forms preparation. Have we reconciled payroll to itself? It's really important that we do this at least once a month. It's a super easy process, and what we'll do, run that deposit summary report, which is based on transactions, compare it to the employee and employer subject to reports, which are coming and producing accumulated totals off of your employee record. So that's what we call the master files. So make sure you're doing a comparative, that you are confident that you're in balance every month. Don't let this thing get away from you and find out at the end of the year that you're actually out of balance back in January. If you've got this process in place, it'll help you keep on top of things and identify potential situations or issues that need to be corrected. So make sure you're doing at least a reconciliation at the very least every month. You'll thank me later, I promise. All right, so back into forms preparation. Give a glance, take a look at your pays, take a look at your deduction setup. Are they set up accurately? Make sure that the before employer, before employee taxes are marked as appropriate. You may have something that was marked as exempt and it shouldn't be. This is a good time to identify that issue and fix it. Make your corrections. So I've attached a screen. You'll see on the left-hand side, we've got US pay and deduction setup. On the right, we've got a Canadian pay and deduction setup, and you'll be able to see the similarities between both. Now, taxes, right? Have we verified that taxes with the limits have calculated correctly? Again, using the subject to employee, subject to employer, and the deposit summary, when you're looking at any tax that has a limit, that subject to amount will equal that limit. So you want to make sure that your taxes are set up appropriately. For US Social Security taxes, it's $176,100. For CPP for Canadian, it is $71,300. So make sure you're on top of this, okay? We want to make sure that we have accurate totals. So it doesn't hurt to just kind of, as you're going through preparing your forms, you tab through and look at those taxes that have limits. So forms, again, back into that forms preparation topic, have we entered all items which should be reported on the T4 or the W-2? Now for US folks, it's going to be the overtime and double time premium amounts, okay? Things that could affect both US and Canadian customers: cost of employer-sponsored health coverage, officers' health insurance, company car, third-party sick pay, stock options, 401k Roth or RRSP deductions. All of those would be reported on these forms. And for Canadian folks, it could be other information codes, things that you might need to report and have a specific code identifier that go along with that item. So you might have First Nations people's pays, mileage, things like that. Make sure these forms are set up correctly. The other thing, you only need one form. It's not necessary to set up a T4 or W-2 form every year. All you need is one. So let's take a look at, talk about the T4 a little bit. Last year, there was some conflicting information on the CRA website with regard to how Box 26 should pull information for the T4. On one set of instructions on the CRA website, they referenced only boxes 16 and 17. On another part of that website, kind of buried down a little bit, was where it mentioned 16, 16A, 17, and 17A amounts. That was the correct instruction. Okay, they have since corrected their website. So now it does only show the box 16, 16A, 17, 17A for box 26. So it is correct. But there was some conflicting information on this, as you can imagine, led to a lot of questions for last year. Now, if you are a multiple province employer, the work province on the employer record will include the wages subject to CPP2. Okay. All other provincial box 26 wages will include the wages subject to 16 or 17. So if you are not a multi-province employer, no worries. You don't have to think about the amounts that are shown in box 26. They will be accurate. But if you're multi-province, keep in mind that only the work province will show the CPP2 in box 26. Okay. And this is as designed. Okay, so questions about how that form should be filled out. We have the T4 format pulled up. You're going to have, specific information. You'll see those amounts that you're familiar with. If you are curious about what they are or what other boxes or codes are available, you can go to the Help Topics, click on Index, and type in boxes on the T4 forms. It's a great resource. A lot of times we forget that that help topic is there, but it has got a lot of great information. Now, I keep harping on reconciling, but it's super important that we reconcile and we know that we're in balance. So again, you're going to print that deposit summary, first day of the reporting period to the last day of the reporting period. Take your data into test mode in Atrix and verify those totals. It's going to be very important to identify any outage. And if you find something, we close the form, identify the problem, fix it, go back into test mode, and continue with your test to verify your totals are good. The T4 slip must reconcile the summary, right, to the deposit summary. We don't want to add a balance, okay? We don't want to have to think about any outages or having to amend anything. So if we go into test mode, we get the opportunity to identify problems, fix it, close it, go back into test mode again. Don't assume that that's the only issue that you had. Once you fix an issue, make sure it's completely in balance before you go into the final reporting and submit those forms. Now, two T4s print to a page. Okay, so you'll see as you go through your process, you'll see you'll have two T4s to a page. Okay, so the W-2 form. This year we do have some changes, and make sure you familiarize yourself with your forms and any changes which may need to be altered or added. So specifically for 2025, we know the W-2 form has not changed. So we have a choice when it comes to reporting overtime premiums. We can either provide a statement to our employees, which is basically a report that we've got on this knowledge-based article, which will print 1 page per person, or we have the option of adding this information to box 14 on the W-2 form. We know that for 2026, there will be changes. We don't know what those changes are right now because there's nothing finalized, but we know any changes in 2026 will not impact 2025. As with our Canadian folks, the forms preparation, as you're going through this, you have the same options in the help topics, help topics, index, and you can simply type in box 12. You'll see you've got other content there, box 13, box 14, and this gives you the specific codes that are affiliated with that type of benefit or information that you are reporting on that W-2 form. So you'll want to make sure that you've assigned the correct code. You can also reference the circular E. This is what this information is coming from, but make sure you affiliate that particular code with that item that you're reporting on that form. Again, compare that deposit summary with that Atrix Prepare Grid. Verify that your totals reconcile. You also get the opportunity to, as both Canadian and US, if there's a problem, let's say maybe retirement plan, or for Canadian folks, it could be dental information that's missing. Atrix will identify that information that is missing and give you the opportunity to run a report off of what's missing. So you can go back in there and make those changes. Okay. It will not let you proceed with your test unless you fix those issues. Okay, in the test mode. The other thing to keep in mind, anything that you do either in test or while you're doing the actual forms, any changes you make on the Atrix Prepare Grid will not write back to your data. Okay, very important. If you make a change to the Atrix Prepare Grid, it's not going to write back to your data. Okay. We shouldn't have to make changes on that Prepare Grid. The most minute thing that I can think of that we would ever want to make a change to would be maybe we forget to check the retirement checkbox, right? But if we go through test mode, we'll identify those issues, get out of test mode, make the changes, go back into test mode. We want the process to be error-free. So use test mode to familiarize yourself with those forms, okay? When you do the W-2 form, you'll also get the federal W-3. This is that report that should tie out to the 4 quarters of the 941s that you submitted for 2025. You want to make sure that those totals agree, that they are accurate. If the IRS is looking at your data, they're going to look at your last 941 along with the 3 previously submitted 941s, and they're going to be looking at this form. Okay, so we want to make sure that everything is good before we submit anything. And again, if we identify a problem, we fix it before we proceed. All righty. So the US W-2 form prints 4 quadrants to a page. So you've probably all seen something that looks exactly like this, and there's 4 of them to one page. If you ever had to submit a W-2C, it actually prints 4 pages with each page looking like 1 quadrant of the original W-2 form. Okay, so a recap for T4 slips and W-2s. Always print that deposit summary to help you reconcile. Always use check date and always use the first day of the period you're reporting to the last day of the period that you're reporting or check date that you're reporting. In other words, if I made the assumption that my first check date of 2025 was on 1/5, but I forgot that I had a layoff check dated 1/3, when I go to run my deposit summary, those totals are going to be less than what they should be when I compare it to my Atrix Prepare Grid. So make sure, always use that first day to the last day. Make sure you run your reports in test mode first. Identify any issues. And we know no one's going to have issues, right? It's going to be 100% accurate, but just in case it's not, make sure you run it in test mode first. Note any corrections that need to be made, make those corrections, go back in and run it through test mode again. Once everything is perfect, then you're ready to actually create those final forms and have them submitted. Running in test mode also lets you familiarize yourself with the messages that Atrix displays, because Atrix does go through a lot of messages, and we'll go through that. Now, before we run our final reports, we're going to verify the Atrix forms have been updated. We're going to make sure the year on those forms is accurate. And we're going to make sure that we're using the correct software version, right? Okay, just a little blurb on lovely ACA forms. This was something that I know many of us were hoping would go away, but it hasn't. The only thing that has changed really is that you do not have to provide the employee with the form. Now, if the employee requests the form, you do have to provide them that. So it's a good idea as you go through the process, save your forms to a PDF. That way, should an employee ask for the form, you can open that PDF, find that page, and print that page for that employee. You do still have to submit these forms, okay? Couple things that you're going to do before you go in. View your ACA settings on your payroll settings. Make sure the default coverage code, the default plan share costs, the safe harbor, your origin of policy, and your plan start month are accurate for 2025. So think of majority rules, okay? So the default coverage code, your default safe harbor, this is going to be the plans that your company offer to most employees, and most employees elect these these forms, okay, or elect this coverage code. The default plan share cost is the least expensive plan costs that one employee would pay for in a month. Does not include what they've actually selected. It's the least expensive plan that they could pay. Okay. So, and they only want it for the employee only, does not count spouse, family, dependents, nothing like that. Okay. Now, default origin policy, IRS does have a little chart that, and you'll want to make sure you've selected your company's where you fall in that list of choices. There's 8, I think it goes from A to G. Now, plan start month, that is not the month that the employee, let's say, was hired and got the coverage. This is the month that your company's plan begins. For Sage, we happen to begin in January, but your company could be different. It could be March, it could be August, whatever month it begins, that is what you want on the plan start month date. This is what the form looks like. You can see it hasn't changed much. It is the form. Unfortunately, we're hoping that eventually it will go away, as I know many people are, but it hasn't gone anywhere yet. And so we are going to make sure we fill out this form and provide the good information for this one too. We'll make sure it's accurate. Another tip on this, if your employee has not worked in 2025, their exempt status should be not working. Okay. Okay, so just to recap, we talked about the year-end center, we talked about the forms preparation, and we talked about performing Atrix review and test. Now, here are the deadlines for this year, okay? These are subject to change, and where you know you can get good, up-to-date information would be our year-end center, right? So make sure we keep an eye on that too. Atrix does a really good job at publishing these changes and letting folks know if the deadlines change. Please don't wait till the last day to submit your forms, because you know you will. It'll be extremely busy. Okay, so we want to make sure you get these out, kind of save yourself a little stress and aggravation. Make a plan to get these forms submitted prior to these deadlines. I'd like to thank you guys all for attending. I also want to make sure that you all know that there is a webinar schedule and registration. You can sign up for other classes. We've got a great AP class that's going to be next week, and we have a server client installation and upgrades webinar available next week as well. Don't miss these sessions. They are just great information to have. And having this information under your belt gives you confidence in what you're about to do too. Like I said before, it's hard to get used to doing something you only do once a year. So let's go here. I also have a link to knowledge-based articles. So if we need to, we can actually click on these. Again, this information will be available to you. So keep an eye on that community hub. All right. So let's go in and let's talk about questions, and I'm going to bring up payroll.
Perfect. Thanks, Gaylene. We have a couple questions, and they're probably still going to come in. So we'll start with the first one, which is there a way to export the test mode into an Excel format? One of our users said they copy it one column at a time, but is there an easier way?
No, but you can. So, and I guess part of me is wondering, if you're in test mode, remember, nothing gets saved in test mode. You can save these reports to a PDF. I don't know if they have much luck in pulling a PDF into Excel. I've never tried it personally, but you can also take screenshots or identify issues. Also, as you go through the test mode, Atrix will flag errors for you on your behalf, and there's an opportunity to print a report for those error messages. So you can do that as well. So you get, as you go through.
How do you print that report for the in-test mode?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm going to go here, Federal e-file and reporting, and you guys can still see my screen. Come on, we're going to wait for it to pop up. But sometimes, as you know, it can be a little slow, so I am waiting for that to pop up here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to say new report. And I'm going to say W-2. Now, my forms, of course, right now, because we haven't yet got to the point where Atrix has updated it, but I'm pulling 2025. Next, generate. And I'm going to make an error on the prepare grid. So I'm going to like say lower a Social Security amount, because remember, Atrix also looks at your subject to for Social Security and Medicare, and basically does a calculation to see if the amount of tax that's being reported on this form is correct. It's taking the subject to times the tax rate and will identify people who are outside of that $1 difference or range. So I'm going to pull this over so you guys can see the screenshots that pull up. And again, it keeps wanting to go to the other page, which happens. Come on, you get over there. Don't get stuck. Oh, let's find that mouse. Ah, come on. There you are. Okay, so I'm going to say, no, I want to test drive with all of my employees. There's some questions that pop up you'll want to make sure you answer. If you use or merge data folders, you would click yes to this, I use multiple data files for this company. My company information, if I need to change anything, my contact, my title, my phone, this is the opportunity to make those changes. So tax prepared type, I'm filing for my company. This state tax items, now obviously I do a lot of testing in this data set. You more than likely may not have this many states listed on yours, but you could for those companies that are multi-state. It'll identify issues that might be incorrect. So if I'm missing a tax ID or if the formatting has changed for the state, it'll prompt you to re-enter that ID. So it also will give you things like this. It says, hey, Washington has no W-2 reporting requirement for the paid family leave. Neither does Oregon, Colorado, Massachusetts, so DC. So I'm just going to say, okay. And right here, if I happen to be in this great state of Pennsylvania, I'm going to have Act 32 taxes. Now, do I have any employees who are exempt from any part of Medicare or Social Security? I could. There's those F1 student visa type of employees. I could have somebody like that, in which case I would check yes. In this case, I don't, so I'm going to say no. Do I have any employees who are members of clergy? Nope. Do I want to use control numbers? No, but you could. You could decide you do. Do I have any employees who elected to receive W-2 forms electronically? I might have, right? There is a slight discount if if Atrix sends the W-2 forms electronically. It's not much. It kind of equates to about the cost of a stamp. It could be, Control numbers. Well, I'm not going to use any. I am a 941 employer. Okay. Do I have third-party sick pay? Those that do will need to mark this box. The other thing that's really critical is that on the Employee Entry Info tab, we also mark that box for third-party sick pay. Actually, it's on the Miscellaneous tab, along with the retirement plan. Okay. If I have any other information I need to add here, I can add it. I'm going to say truncate with asterisks. And it's going to pull up my form. Now, I'm going to intentionally make an error on the grid, okay? So you can see what type of message pops up. And we're waiting. It's kind of going through its little refreshing. And then I want to make sure that everybody gets this. You're in test drive mode. I say, yes, thank you very much. I do want that. Now I'm going to pull the grid over. Pull this over here. And I am going to pull over that top grid. So I'm going to tell it okay to this message because it won't let me grab that grid until I do. It pulled it over to another screen. All right, so right here, I'm going to go into here, Social Security wages, and I'm going to tell it, let's see here, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say $1,000 even. Now, it's going to show us all of our employees. Now, obviously, you guys will most likely have more than just 11 people on here. I'm going to hit the next. Now, also, as we go through this wizard, that's what it is. It's a little prepare wizard. I want to make sure you see that it tells us, hey, you're in test drive right up here. As I go through it, it's validating information. So you're going to see things on here like, retirement plan. You're going to see third-party sick pay if that box is checked. Okay, here's the first error. Potential issues have been discovered and highlighted. Okay, so this is Social Security wages times the tax does not equal or fall within $1 of what the tax should be withheld. Now, I can go in here and I can say print a list. That'll show me everybody, okay? Or I can hit a save list. I can even have the option of continue without correcting. More than likely, we're going to make sure that we correct this. So for right now, if I just say, nope, go ahead and continue without correcting. Now, if I went in and manually changed anything here, it will not go back to my data, especially we're in test mode. These reports that we're creating here will not be saved because we're in test mode. So here it is again, kind of just a warning, hey, I've got a problem. I don't fall within $1 of what my calculated tax should be. Again, I have the option to go continue without correcting. Okay, now this is the typical Atrix splash screen that you'll see. This could change, because we're still a little bit early in the year, but it gives us the option to go ahead and use their complete package. And a lot of times it does save you some money, but you'll have to evaluate that yourself and decide if you want to go with this. Okay. If I hit next, it gives me the option for an archive, and I'm just going to say no. I can save these files to a PDF on my own, but again, it's your choice as to what you want to do. I usually recommend having your forms, your tax forms, saved on a secure drive where yourself, your CFO, your accountant can access the information and get to it. It's not going to be available for the general workforce or other employees within your company. Keep it secure. Okay, this simply gives us, this is simply a list of the states that are going to be reported. I don't need to print that list, so if I hit select all or whatever, it's just going to provide me a list of those reports. I'm just going to hit next and I will get to those forms anyways. Now here is the other information that are going to display, and again, this is all things that we're going to verify. I'm going to hit next. You don't need a copy of this list. That's what that means right there. So we're going to go through it. It's going to bring up those forms for us. Again, we want to make sure we know we're in test mode. Okay.
Hey, Gaylene, while we're in here, can you show where you can see that version of Atrix?
Yeah, let me go up here. Help. About tax forms. Thank you, Shard. That's a great question. About tax form and e-filing by Atrix. So let's say we went in and we realized there was something drastically wrong, or something, maybe we're missing our archives, something's wrong, and we need to call Atrix. Atrix is going to ask you, well, have you updated to the latest version? Well, yes, I have. I can show you. I can go up here, help, and I can go to about tax forms and e-filing by Atrix. So it tells me exactly.
Sorry, I just interrupted you. Bad Char.
No.
That's all. That help is also available as soon as you get to the grid, correct?
Yeah, so right here, I didn't go back. So I could have gone back. It's whenever you have a report open, you're going to be able to get to that help. Now, the other thing you can do too, sometimes we might have companies who merge their filings together. So if you had more than one company folder, at some point you'll be prompted to save the report, and then you can go into that secondary company, create the filings, and you'll save the report, and then you can merge them together, which makes it so nice. So if I was reconciling and I had more than one company that shared the same, federal identification number, I could go in and I wouldn't compare my deposit summary until I merged both of those filings together. Then I know I've got good detail.
And it's going to prompt you to update if you're not on the most recent version, right?
It does, but I've seen it where somebody will upgrade to let's say the latest 25.2, and they go in and open up Atrix, and it shows 2017 as the form. That means the update couldn't complete, and it could just be a simple thing of closing payroll completely and then going back in and opening it up. Or it could be where we need to manually download Atrix. Manually downloading Atrix is super easy. We do want to get out of payroll and we do it. And I do believe we've got a linked KB for that as well. And you just launch the download, let it run, then go back in and reopen. And you should then see the new forms. Many times lately, it's been automated that the new forms are immediately there. But if they're not, and you do get the prompt to upgrade your files, make sure you do so, and you'll see the new forms, the year. That's a giveaway that you don't have the latest update installed.
We don't know when those come out because Atrix releases them.
It's up now pretty immediately. It's every Tuesday afternoon, okay? And they're very good at being very responsive about submitting changes and getting them, pushed out. They're really good about that. So, but at year-end time, it could be more than once a week. It could be twice a week. It all depends on our lovely states, federal government, some localities, if they have changed the smallest thing on a form. Like say they changed the effective date. Maybe it was August, now it's September. They're pushing out an update so that your new form has that September date. So keep in mind, they're constantly providing updates to forms, not only for major form changes, but the little things like those effective dates. When those change, Atrix pushes it out, so they're on top of them. Okay, so here's our part W-2 form. Now at the top it tells you exactly what it is. And remember, you're in test mode. There's no need to print the copy at this point because you're in test. And if you've identified an issue earlier on the grid, you're going to go in and fix that issue, then come back. So I mean, you certainly could print your test forms if you want to, but save them as a PDF. I wouldn't bother wasting paper on it because you're still in test. And these are not the final documents. Okay, you'll see at the top here, it'll tell you test drive. Just trying to say, hey, don't do anything yet. You're still in test. But this is a good process to go through and familiarize yourself with not only the forms that print, but the order in which they print and what they look like.
Gaylene, what if I notice that like my Pennsylvania tax ID number is wrong when I'm looking at this?
Good question. Now remember, I'm still in test, so any changes I make won't save it, but I can go up to edit and I can go to company setup while I have a form open, and I can go in and change that ID. So it makes it really nice when I go through the Atrix company setup. Good question. I can get back to that state and local items, and I can change that ID.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So any other questions, or do you want me to keep going through the process?
I've been trying to ask you questions when you're in areas where they can
answer. I get it.
Done pretty much with the Atrix questions, except for some specific box questions. Okay. So I'll let you continue on, and then we can go to those questions.
Sure. So federal W-2, you're going to see you've got 2 people on one page. Again, get in the habit of saving these and naming them as they are. So if it was myself who was doing it, I might call it 2025 W-2 W-3 federal W-2. So I know this is the federal W-2 form. Okay. As I keep going, I'm going to tell no, but I do like to save my forms to a PDF. So I have them and they're accessible. And then, so then if, let's say somebody came and said, I need my W-2 from 2023. Well, I can access that because I've got it saved in a secure location. So right here, Here's that lovely 941 federal W-3. Remember this form right here, very important. You could print this while you're in test mode and then pull your 941 forms and make sure you're in balance. This is a good one. But I might save it and call it, 2025 941 federal W-3 test. So now we're getting into the various states. So you can see here's the District of Columbia, and it will print. You can print this. This is what's going to be filed for District of Columbia. So if I were to save this one, obviously I'd call it 2025 W-2 District of Columbia W-2, right? So I know exactly what that is. I'll just say cancel. So I would, if I had a particular file saved for this year, I would go ahead and save it in there so I have it. I make sure I'm protecting everything. Yeah, I know. Okay, come on. So again, each one will tell you what it is. And as I go through here, I can just hit cancel. Some states have special forms that they want to print when you generate, a W-2 form. Like they might have like their 941 or other things. So you can see it's going through and providing those details.
All right. Is there anything other than just the forms that we're going to see here?
No, it's just the forms on this one. It's just the whole process going through it. But this is that process that I want to make sure people familiarize themselves with because it is an annual process. So we do want to make sure everybody goes through, and I can cancel out of this. The next thing that I might want to do after I get done with my W-2s and I've gone through test mode, it looks clean, is do a test mode of the ACA forms. Okay, because that's another thing that I want to identify if there's a problem and fix it if there is. So Perfect. Really important. Okay. Now I can go ahead and get out of here because I know it's a little boring going through all these steps, but it's good information, and it's just one of those things that, again, we don't get the opportunity to go through this very often. It's an annual experience, let's say. So we do want to make sure that everybody is complying and feels comfortable with the task and knows what they need to do prior to doing it. It's so much easier to identify a problem and fix it before you go and print those, those forms that are not a draft copy, but a hard copy, basically.
Well, all right. I have a bunch more questions. I have
let's do it.
One little Canadian question, which is not little, it's a big one, but in Canada, they're not able to see a test mode. Is that not available for Atrix and for Canadian?
Yeah, they should be able to go into test mode in Canadian.
Okay.
Yeah, they should be able to go in test mode. And remember, as they go through it, they're going to verify their totals, make sure everything is correct, make sure their T4 format set up appropriately, and the dental status on the employee record is marked, because that is something that Revenue Canada does require reporting on.
Perfect. So I bet you're already prepared for these questions. So we have a lot on the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Mm-hmm. We have some people who would like you to show how to add the overtime to the W-2 box 14. Mm-hmm. And then we have a lot on how will overtime and double time be calculated, how to get the statements. Those reports are all out in our knowledge base article, which I have posted a couple times out in the Q&A and is included on your list.
Right. So I'm going to bring up my modified form, W-2 form. And again, so the other thing too, remember, you don't need more than one T4 W-2 form. Okay. So what I decided to do, let's say as an option in this company, is I could run the premium portion of the overtime pay as a formula. Okay, it's these types of changes were done mid-year. A lot of us, the Fair Labor and Standards Act does not recognize double time. There's some rules when it comes to reporting overtime. Generally, they consider anything more than 40 hours in a week potentially would be overtime. Double time is not recognized. Well, we know double time happens because we all have union employees where we have to pay double time in order to satisfy those union requirements. Because it's not recognized, we have to take the double time amount, the premium amount, down to what the premium amount would be for overtime pay. So we do that with formulas. So if I go into tools and formulas, the knowledge base article was created to that overtime would be the overtime pay ID and double time would be the double time pay ID. You can change the ID that's referenced on that knowledge base article to match your ID. So if I go in here and I'm going to go ahead and bring in PRYR overtime. Okay, so right here we had a prior year overtime formula. And it's basically a lookup formula to the amount of overtime calculated under pay ID OT. So I've got a lot of formulas in here, so I don't want to scare you guys, but what it's doing is it's a lookup to the prior year amount for overtime. We then take that formula, which is right here, and we take it and we multiply it by 0.66667. That will come up with the premium, or actually this comes up with the overtime, regular pay portion of an overtime pay. So if we made the assumption somebody made $50 an hour, well, $50 times time and a half is 75. I could take that. Let's say I had, let me see if I get my calculator to come up here. Let's go here. Come on. Okay, so if I had $50 times 1.5 time and a half, 75, this times 0.66667 brings me back to that $50. Okay, I then would take that $75 minus the $50, which comes up with that premium portion of that overtime pay. Okay, so that's what this is basically doing, is coming up with that premium portion of the overtime pay. So it's saying take that prior year overtime minus that prior year, which calculates what the regular pay portion was of that amount, and show me that as the prior year premium overtime. Now, double time is a little different. Double time, we get to that calculation by doing a lookup to the prior year double time, and then we multiply it by 50% and then 50% again to get that calculation of $25. So let me kind of whip up this little calculation here. So if I had somebody $50 times time and a half, or double time, right? 2, then I'm going to take that times 0.50 times 0.50. And I get to that $25 equivalent. So the double time premium cannot be higher than the overtime premium. Now, if you have to pay triple time, and sometimes we do see that, it's very rare, but it does occur, we would have to do another calculation so that the triple time pay does not exceed the usual overtime premium calculation. That's a lot of thought, right? A lot of math in there, but we need to make sure that it's accurate. In the end, the double time exemption and the overtime exemption are added together to produce box 14. Oh, come on, get up there. Let's see here.
So in Char's mind, that means that on your example of the $50, whether they're being paid overtime, double time, or triple time, it's the $25.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfectly explained. Yes. It is going, and you can, don't don't let me scare you with my formulas, you guys. I've been working on these things for a long time. So, so what we want to find is we're going to say prior year overtime exemption. You can see that this is that calculation that's saying prior year calculation plus prior year double time. So they're added together and placed on the W-2 form. Okay, box 14. Now, remember we said the form has not changed for 2025. 2026, there will be changes. We do know that they're going to want this in box 12 for next year, and they're kind of, there's rumors about the codes they want to use. Nothing is finalized. So we're not going to put anything out there until we've got final documentation. We want to make sure that everything is been finalized, is vetted, and tested thoroughly before we put anything out there. Okay, so the other thing that's nice about this year is that the IRS has kind of granted grace to us, kind of like they did for all of us when we had to do back in 2015 for the ACA forms. They're basically do your best to report the accurate information. Okay, they know there's different things that can occur from a situation where somebody pays overtime to an employee, but they didn't exceed 40 hours in that work week. Technically, that doesn't count as an overtime premium. Okay. There's a lot of rules that are being, published and kind of talked about, but until we have final publication when it comes to 2026, we're not going to put anything out there. Okay. For this year, we're basically doing our best to report the correct amount for the premium portion of an overtime pay. And because it happened mid-year, we're doing a look back period to the prior year, amount, and assuming that, of course, that we're all going to print our W-2s after we close the 2025 year. If you're going to print your W-2s before you close the 2025 year, our formulas will not look at prior year, they'll look at year to date. Okay, year to date amounts. And these formulas are doing a look back at the employee pay record. So they're going into the employee pay record and pulling that information.
Gaylene, what if you work for a union, or I think it's California, where your overtime is calculated on hours you work more, like if you work 9 hours in a day, anything over 8 hours is overtime?
Yeah, we can't account for that. We don't know because it was started mid-year when all this came about. So it would have to be a more in-depth calculation, and it would be something that a lot of people may want to work with their consultants on creating a custom report. That report is going to have many conditions, formulas, and calculations, and then would have to be manually added to the W-2 form because we can't get that type of a transactional formula to work on a W-2 form to report that information. So for instance, it would have to be some type of if statement that was run off of a transaction record that would say if hours are greater than 40 and pay ID is equal to OT or pay ID is equal to DT, it would have to be two completely separate calculations to be counted because it would have to take that pay ID if the hours are greater than 40 and make the calculation for the overtime premium for overtime. And a separate formula would have to say if, hours worked are greater than 40 and pay ID equal to DT, take that amount down to the overtime premium amount. You can see how it gets complex. Another thing that can throw a wrench in it, some people will set up their sick, PTO, vacation, or holiday pay as regular pay types, not other pay types. Regular pay types will then accumulate under the regular hours. So if somebody had that situation, the formula would even be more complex because it would have to look at if pay ID equal reg and this is greater than 40, or if pay ID equal OT and the regular hours are greater than 40, then do this calculation. You can kind of see how it can get more and more complex, and really intensive testing would have to be done to make sure that the totals are accurate. Everybody
Okay.
with me still? I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot. It is a lot. But it's a lot of considerations, and then you've got to kind of be your own best devil's advocate. Okay, well, this is true. Well, what about that? You know what I mean? That type of thing. So you can see how this type of reporting can be more and more complex. The
And
more
what we
Mhm.
have available is out in the knowledge base article that I've posted. It's also included in the slide deck.
Mhm.
And if that doesn't work for your company because you run into these things, the best bet is going to be to reach out to your consultant or to our Sage Expert Services immediately and get an appointment with them to help get that information.
Right. And the biggest, so again, luckily we did add the IRS publication. I think it was dated 11/5, but we tested it and modified it and put it on that article, I think on 11/7. And it's basically the notification for granting, some grace on your totals. Do your best. Come up with the best amounts. They know that the hard part about this whole thing, if the Fair Labor Standards Act recognized double time, this would be easy, but they're not. So that makes it tough. So those companies that are working with unions, those employees, based upon that act, may not get the full overtime premium that the employee thinks they may get. So that may end up being a hard conversation between, you and your employees to say, hey, this is union, double time's not recognized by, so it's going to be one of those things that, they'll have to have that conversation or prepare themselves for that conversation should it come up.
And these formulas and reports are just available in the knowledge base. Everybody's going to have to set them up
Yes.
in their software.
Yes. And remember that we used the most common overtime, double time IDs for OT and DT. It is really easy to just modify those formulas to look at your ID. So if maybe you had OT1 or you had a number 2 for overtime, all you do is switch out the ID that's inside the quotations. So it's really, really easy. And if you need help, you can always give us a call. Oh, come on. Let me go over here. Let me show you. With formula structures, we go in and we must include the type. So right here's a good example. So looking up a prior year pay off the peer employee pay record, employee, because W-2s do run off master and transactions, but for these types of formulas, they're coming off the employee master. So you're going to pull employee off the peer employee record. 2 designates that it is an overtime pay type. Okay. Anything in quotes is the exact ID of that pay you're looking for. So if I had a pay that was set up not as double time or DT or maybe 3, right? This is an old. All I'd have to do is grab that, copy it, okay, and I could call it prior year DT, and then I might just want to put quote 3. So I'm telling it I'm looking at pay ID 3. I would tell it okay. Then I would go to change, and I would simply go in here and I would take off that ID in quotes and put in my 3 and call it good, tell it okay. So I could use this within my calculations. So it's really easy to modify a formula that you've got. Make sure you copy it, save the name to what you want it to be, and then make your changes. Any questions? I know there's a little silence in there, so I'm thinking, okay.
Well, we have some more questions. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. So what we will do is these questions will go through both Gaylene and I, and we'll get answers to them, and we'll include them in the Community Hub post. That includes the video playback link, the PDF format of the slide deck, as well as the Q&As. And if you didn't attend yesterday's webinar, you may want to look at those. I'll be in one post, I believe. So there'll be Q&As from that one combined with the Q&As from today. And hopefully we get all of your questions answered.
All right. Well, gosh, we certainly appreciate your time. We appreciate your attendance. We hope you guys have a great new year and a great year end. And remember, test and run that deposit summary.
All right. And don't forget that we still have that AP and INSULC webinar next week. We hope to see you guys there too.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, guys.